Hi everyone. Today you're gonna have a Plankton chat with a special guest. It's Gabrielle Corradino. She's a PhD. I'm gonna put here the subject of our live. If I can. Never able to. Oh my God. I can't put the subject of our life, but today we're gonna talk about career and about plankton in general with Gabrielle Corradino. She's here. I'm gonna invite her to join us. And well, she is an ecologist with hi, how are you? Welcome.
Hello.
Gabrielle. Hello. I'm gonna introduce you a little bit, and then you can say you can talk a little bit about you, because I think you're just a PhD, and then in a resume you sent me. You weren't, and then you are an ecologist, you are a biologist, yes, and an ecologist with a passion for marine science and organism behavior and education. And you were inspired early on by meeting Dr. Sylvia Earle, and you discovered her calling in ocean research. This propelled Corradino's work throughout her undergraduate and master's studies, and has now culminated in her pursuit of a PhD in biological oceanography at North Carolina State University. And Corradino is a department of the Interior Climate Science Fellow and is working toward understanding the trophic dynamics of plankton. And through current research, she will begin to answer questions. I just answered these questions, and we are going to talk a little bit about this today. And on the little known plankton called nanoflagellates, and she will begin and elucidate the role they play within the microbial food web. And you are also a Sea Grant Nels Fellow and aims to significantly contribute to governmental science policy. She has a profile on Instagram that's March of the Plankton, and it's very interesting. Everybody must follow her. It's awesome. It's from Instagram. We met, and you have a lot of plankton and a lot of plankton pictures and knowledge. You share a lot of plankton knowledge on your Instagram, and it's very nice. And then welcome, Gabrielle. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to receive you tonight to talk about some plankton.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here with a fellow plankton enthusiast. I know that you are a big fan of plankton as well, so
Yes.
It's really great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yes, we are. I don't see much people talking about plankton and sharing this knowledge on social media, and as you do, and I admire your work a lot because of that. Then congratulations for a job with plankton, and to share this knowledge about these microorganisms that are very important, and we know for our life, for everything. Then it's very nice, and appreciate a lot it. And well, I'll see. I will disable. I don't know what you think. It's better than disable the comments. Then we can talk a little bit. I have some questions, and then after we can come back and see if our public, the people, have some questions to you. Okay, let me see
Yeah,
if
that
it's
sounds great.
let me disable. Okay. Okay. Then, Gabrielle, I'd like to know, and how did your passion for plankton begin?
I've always been interested in ecology, and I've always been in and around the ocean. But I didn't know a lot about plankton until pretty late in the career, pretty late into my undergraduate, where I recognized that, plankton are the reason why we have great whales and the reason why we have sharks and everything else. And so that's kind of was the very beginning when I started to get into plankton. And when I graduated my undergrad, I worked at Yale University for a little while and worked with freshwater plankton. And
Oh, that's
eventually I
interesting.
just kind of took it to a PhD in North Carolina. And my advisor that I had there is incredible, and she has a passion for plankton, and so she just taught me the same things that she was taught, and so I'm carrying on the plankton legacy a little bit.
Oh, this is nice. Then you worked a little bit with freshwater zooplankton too?
Yes. Yeah,
Oh,
everyone knows. I mean, the pond, the familiar ones, paramecium, actinospherium, the ones that everyone knows in grade school and things like this.
oh, that's nice because here I work more with freshwater zooplankton than,
Hmm.
and people in general here in Brazil work more with freshwater zooplankton than marine zooplankton. But we have both. But it's
Of
nice
course.
to know that you had this freshwater zooplankton experience too.
So what about you? How did you get involved with plankton studies?
Yeah, you see, in the beginning of my undergraduation, I am biologist, and I always had the passion for water conservation. I don't know why I love the ocean and lakes, rivers, and I started working in a limnology lab. And then when I started working there, it was the first time I saw plankton on microscope, and I got
You were
very
hooked.
yeah. Then I worked, and then it begins there, and I did my master's in ecology with
Hmm.
zooplankton, and my doctorate was with golden mussel. That's an invasive species here. It's similar to zebra mussel that you have in North
Yep.
America. Here in South America, we have a golden mussel, that's Limnoperna fortunei, that's invasive and impacts on plankton. Then my study on doctorate was about this, to test the impacts of this invasive species, even the larvae that are planktonic,
Hmm.
and on cyanobacteria. And then I started working with the consulting, environmental consulting, and it's what I did until now.
Very
Always
nice.
had plankton in my life. Yeah, it's nice. And I'd like to ask you, because I always, when I watch your lives and when I follow you and
Mhm.
the your speak and then what you talk about plankton, I think it's very interesting. And thinking about that, I'd like to ask you and you to share with us why do we care about plankton?
Oh, that's a big question. Why do we care? Well, plankton, whether it be freshwater or marine, you know, they're the base of the food web. So if you think about what plankton, plankton are responsible for our fish. They're responsible for our, the shellfish industry that we have and the food, any type of protein that comes from our freshwater or marine systems depend directly on plankton. And when you think about what that means for something like if you go all the way up the food web, if you're going all the way up to your shark, It all starts at the baseline, right? It all starts with a healthy plankton population. And so really we should continue to invest in plankton research, because without it, you're left being blindsided by a harmful algal bloom, or you become ill prepared. And so the studying of plankton really is the benefit of all, aquatic and marine ecosystems. I think that's the biggest thing that whenever I tell my family and whenever I talk to my family about, well, why do you study plankton? I'm able to say, well, if you like eating your fish, if you like that oyster, if you like, going on a whale watch, it's all because of plankton. So there are a lot of fundamental properties that plankton give us and provide us ecosystem services that many people are not aware of. Trees get most of the credit for the oxygen, not the plankton. I mean, they do a lot of important services for us all.
Yes, and this this thing about the oxygen production, I think it's something nice to talk about and to share with people, because I experience the same with my family or with other colleagues that are not plankton plankters and don't
Yep.
study plankton. Then oh, what's that you're studying? Is it for something? What's the importance of this? And then and it's everything linked, as you told, is the basis, is the base of trophic webs, and the oxygen production. It's most of the oxygen production comes from phytoplankton and things like this. And then, do you know about this production about phytoplankton? Is it 50%, 60%? Because sometimes I read a lot of variation of percentage. Like sometimes it's 50%, sometimes it's 70%, and it's a good data to share with people.
It is. I've read that too. The most recent stat that I've read is that it's somewhere between 50 and 70%, but it's likely a little bit closer to 50. I know that it is dependent on where you are, like globally, because I know that it depends on like the cyanobacteria, because some will produce more oxygen than others. And so I think it kind of depends on where you are, in really like where you're taking that stat from. But over 50% is, due from phytoplankton. So it's a very impressive statistic.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's very impressive, and I think it's something that maybe it's difficult to estimate so precisely. So then it's almost think like it's 60 or 70. It's a lot. It's very nice. And what do you think? I know that your work was to study trophic dynamics and microbial and maybe the impacts of climate change on plankton. What do you have to say to people about the global climate change, the effects on plankton?
I would say that the work is just getting started. So if you're interested in climate change and plankton, hop on board, get a PhD. We need all the researchers we can get. So with climate change, the research that I've read, and what I can speak to, is that there are going to be climate change plankton winners and there are going to be losers. There are going to be some plankton that are going to thrive and are going to, do really well. And there are some plankton that are really going to suffer and their abundances are going to drop. And we're going to see that impact, whether you're at whether you're in Antarctica, whether you're in a river in the middle of, the Midwest United States. It doesn't matter. We're going to see the impacts of climate change as the plankton populations begin to shift. I think the combination of ocean acidification and climate change is going to have a huge impact in a way that I don't know if we're going to truly know the ramifications of. in ways that are just going to leave some ecosystems and some marine systems unbalanced. And you're going to see that stress of the temperature fluctuation and the pH shift first and foremost with the plankton. So I think that if you want to learn more about it, for anyone that's listening, there are a lot of great studies that look specifically at ocean acidification and the impact on calcium, organisms that use calcium in our waters to create shells. So look at oysters, look at clams, look at a lot of snails that use calcium into their shell making and how it's being impacted by the pH.
Oh, very interesting. This because I've read something about the rising of the temperature impacts the size of phytoplankton. The size
Mm-hmm.
of plankton, that probably they are gonna be smaller because of
Yep.
the temperature that's higher, and being smaller, then it's less biomass available to all trophic chain. And but
Mm-hmm.
this about acidification, I didn't know, and I'd like you to explain a little bit about the acidification, the relation with the temperature.
Sure. So the paper that I'm thinking about and the examples that are given, I think that there are a few videos on YouTube, and I'm happy to give those resources like when we're done. But effectively, it talks about how the change, how the ocean is shifting, how the pH is shifting. Organisms that have a shell the shells are getting weaker. And so the organisms are not living as long, and they're having a harder time getting to sexual maturity. So you're having some organisms that are not faring as well. They are things like, I've seen papers with snails, marine snails, and also with certain clams and oysters. And then you have the opposite. You have some organisms that are doing really well. So it's important that when we look at a large global impact like climate change or like ocean acidification, that you look to see where the winners are, so where the organisms or the species are that are going to benefit, and the ones that are unfortunately probably not going to make it. And so you'll be able to find both. And again, I'm happy to share. There are two papers they do a really good job explaining it, and one video that I think people would love to learn more about if anyone's interested in ocean acidification.
Oh, that's very interesting. Very nice. This because I didn't think about there's some species that are gonna be like gain the winner with this
Yeah,
global change. Then I've
absolutely.
never thought about that. Because everything's gonna lose with the global. Yeah, then it's interesting. Maybe there's always some species that that are winner with some conditions. And then
Yep.
it's very interesting to know this. Let me see. And Gabrielle, what you think about the plastics and microplastics on plankton? Because we know plastics, they particulate and go smaller and smaller, and then zooplankton is eating plastics. And what do you think about it? What you think it's important to know? You think it's important to share with people?
Well, I think a lot of people think about when we use the word when plastics break down, people think that plastics break down and then they're gone. I think that microplastics are a relatively new term that has started to come into focus maybe in the past like 2, 3, 4 years, but it's relatively recent. And when we use the term microplastics, a lot of people may think about it as like, well, they're really tiny. What is that impacting? Well, they're impacting the plankton community, first and foremost. And so have you seen a lot of microplastic work with what you study, or do you not look at that?
Yes, here in Brazil we have field studies, especially talking about freshwater zooplankton or phytoplankton. I've read some studies with phytoplankton, marine, about this cyanobacteria and the impacts, even the genic impacts, that the exposure of how can I say, subproducts of these microplastics led to cyanobacteria produce genes, stress genes, genes linked with stress because of this. And but it's not our study. It's not Brazilian study. Here in Brazil, we have almost it's very few studies about the impacts of microplastics. Now that's starting. People at the universities are starting to research this subject with microplastics. Then it's still beginning. But I think it's the thing. It's difficult to people to imagine things that they can see as plankton,
Right.
as microplastics, and plankton and microplastics. It's worse than you see. It's something that we have to share. I don't know about you and the research, if you think about studying or researching things like this, like pollution related with plankton, and I don't know how are the studies there.
I mean, it's one of those things that I feel like we are going to be dealing with the ramifications of plastic for the rest of our lives. You know, I feel like microplastics and the breakdown, because the breakdown of plastics takes quite a while. You know, it's not something that happens within a year. So we're going to be, I think, researching this probably heavily, you know, for the foreseeable future, especially as plastic use just really increases, right? This is not a problem that looks like it's going away anytime soon, and we're really in the beginning stages. I don't study microplastics specifically, but you know, every time I go do a tow, and I have a few tows here that I recently did. This is a freshwater one, and this is a saltwater one. Like, you know, I see plastics, and every time I sample. It's just a fact, you know. I mean, I'm sure you do too when you're sampling, whether it's whether it's, you know, fibers and you know, plastic fibers from clothing, whether it's, you know, broken down bottles or something like this. Like, they're always in the plankton samples, especially from the tows that we do that condense, you know, all the plankton into one. So it's a up and coming research topic in plankton that, again, if anyone's interested in, you should hop on board now, go get a PhD in microplastics and plankton.
Yeah,
So,
this is a little bit sad because
I know.
when I walk the beach on my samples, now I'm working more with freshwater samples. Then I sample in some rivers, and it's not always that I find fibers or things, but I've just find fibers and plastics. And in a walk at the beach, I could find many plastics that will become microplastics that I put in my hand in a square meter that I walked. I found just in a beach that's not crowded. How can I say? It's because plastics are everywhere, and it's a little bit sad because, especially for us that work with plankton, then we see, and then it's it's kind of sad. Yeah, but then we should stop using plastics.
That's the goal, right? The goal.
Yeah. Okay, and then tell a little bit about your career, about when did you start, and or what's your work currently? What are you doing now? It's it's not really research now, but you can talk a little bit about your research. What was your PhD research, and now what's your work now?
Sure. So I started my PhD in 2015, and I finished in December of 2019 is when I defended. And instead of going straight on to a postdoc, which is typically something that people do to go do more research in a lab, I went for a year, and it's what I'm doing right now is I'm working for the federal government, and I work in marine policy. And so I work with effectively just the science agency within the United States, and I'm sure you have a similar counterpart in Brazil. And I work in the Office of Education within this science agency. And this fellowship ends in February. And so then after that, I will go back to likely doing research and starting in a lab and things like this. So I think that one of the most important parts of being a scientist is learning about the other people that are stakeholders in science. And one of those stakeholders is the government. And it's important for me. I used to be a teacher. I used to be a science, teacher. I used to be an informal educator in science, and I've done a lot of other jobs that have helped me understand different stakeholders. And I think the fellowship that I'm in now, for anyone that's interested in maybe taking a year and doing something else and stepping outside of research, has helped me gain some perspective on what's important to people outside of a plankton research lab, because there's a whole other world of priorities that this fellowship has helped me begin to understand. So that's an abbreviated version. I did undergraduate, I did a few jobs, I got my master's, I finished my PhD, and I have about 4.5 months left of the fellowship, and then I'll be kicked to the curb, and I'll have to go find some kind of faculty position or some kind of research position sometime in the early spring of 2021, if COVID allows.
Yeah, you'll find, of course, a very good one, physician. And what about what I think is very interesting, what you said about working without being at a university as a scientist, because there's it's other view of other priorities. And I work a little bit with consulting, environmental consulting, and then we have to follow the law, we have to follow the legislation, and then it's a different world than the world I was used to. And most people in Brazil, or I think most people in the world that work with plankton, are more linked to or related to the research and science, and they are linked to universities. And because of this, I think it's very interesting, this experience you have outside the university. And I think it's very nice then when you have this experience, and we have the plankton, and then well, it's the alarm I put for our window. So you can't take too long. And what are the activities you do in this fellowship that you have? That's government things, that's science, and then it's paperwork, but what kind of activities for us to understand?
So much paperwork.
Yeah.
So much paperwork, so many meetings, more meetings than I've had in my entire life. It's crazy. I'll give you 2 examples of what I do. Something that I did a few months ago in my office was my office funds, and they fund environmental literacy grants. And so we have a grant competition, and we take grants from all over different parts of the United States, And the whole point of it is we ask for grants and for people to apply that are proposing a project that centers around resiliency and climate change and community science programs with education. And so, a few months ago, what I had to do is I had to read the grants and I had to participate in the review of the grants and the panels and figure out how we're going to select for them and deal with the paperwork of those that were selected. How to make sure that they were able to go through the system. And so there was a team of about maybe 6 or 7 people in the office, and we received many grants, and so we had to go through all of them. And so that's a very, I think that's familiar to a lot of scientists, because what do? We all write grants, right? We are all writing grants for our research. And so I'm on the other side of it for the office. I'm the one, me and the 6 other people are the ones reviewing them. And so that was part of the work that I did. And then something that an example of something I'm working on now is I help with congressional work. And so I will go to a senator or representative's office virtually, and I'll go with leadership and maybe 1 or 2 other people from the office, and I'll explain, I'll help put together information packets, and so that we can explain how, science education is being brought to, this particular state in the United States. And so it's very much like helping inform congressional leaders about the importance of maybe science education and how the American tax dollars are being used and what programs they're funding, how many people they've reached. And so those are 2 just quick examples of projects that I've been involved with. I think that, the great opportunities, especially the grant review, to understand what's going on in the background. When we apply to all these grants, there's, so many hours that goes into reviewing them. And so it's been very helpful. So that's typically, some examples of the work that I do. And I think for anyone interested, and it's opened to people that have either a master's or PhD program, the fellowship that I'm involved with is called the Knaus. It's in my profile description on my Instagram. So if anyone's interested, feel free to look it up. It's great. It pays for a full year. So it's a really interesting fellowship for those, if anyone's interested.
Yeah, it's hard work. It's not like it's not an individual work as we are at the university. It's okay. We have the lab team, but it's more individual. And this kind of work you are doing, it's something that involves a lot of parts, and it's hard work.
Yeah, a lot of people, a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, but it's very nice. You work with this, and it's an experience different than the experience in the university and an academy. I don't know if then I think it's very, very nice. And Gabrielle, did you describe a species, a nanoflagellate? Yeah, how's the feeling and what's the name? Because I've heard that it at the beginning it was an invasor, and then you decided to take a look at this species. Tell a little bit.
It was a love-hate relationship, because at first I hated it because it contaminated all of my cultures, and I'm sure as a plankton scientist, you never want to have a contaminated culture. But I named the genus and the species, and I'm actually working right now to re-image the organism, because we're trying to do cross sections to get TEM of the organism. And so it's been a hard process, going through the genetics and the intense microscopy and all of that. But it's been great. Its name is, so Canucta is Latin for attached, and so Canucta is the genus. I found it attached to a phytoplankton, and then Canzonelia is the species. And so hopefully I'll be able to post some pictures. Once the paper gets published, I'll be able to
Yeah.
post it on Instagram and share the
Yes.
pictures.
Yeah, I miss your posts. I miss sharing,
I
oversharing. I want
know.
oversharing,
I will I
overposting.
will I will definitely post some more. I've been, ever since COVID, I've been like posting less and less, and so I have to get back into it. I noticed a microscope behind you. Is
Oh, it's
that
an
one that you're
old
using
one.
for work?
It's a
I love it.
stereo microscope. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
in Portuguese it's lupa. Yeah, it is. It's an old one. I used to have it and to use to analyze zooplankton because first I
perfect.
analyzed on, yeah, and now I have another one, a little bit, and then it's for decoration.
I love it.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, and talk a little bit about your experience on NetGeo as a NetGeo explorer. How is it? And because for us, for Brazilian people, it's not common. And then it's I'd like to know a little bit how is this experience and what did you learn most?
Sure. So, I love being a part of the National Geographic family. They are amazing. I first got involved with them when I went on a research cruise, and they funded part of my work on the research cruise in the Gulf of Mexico. And it was for ocean acidification, plankton work. And I last year was awarded an early career leadership fellowship with them, which I'm just finishing up this year. And then actually I was I was down, you'll find this funny. So I was down in DC yesterday, and I was sampling for plankton, and I was in a very smelly river. And so I was there with my net, and I fell in, like I fell in at least twice yesterday into this river trying to get these plankton samples. So the things that we do for science,
Yeah.
and so, right? They're just
Right.
they're a great organization, and they're always very supportive. I really love being with them. I think the biggest thing that I've learned with them is they've taught me. I have to take courses with them, and through about science communication, and that has been probably one of the more helpful things, because I think people think about science communication that it's easy and that anyone can do it, and that it's as simple as posting a picture and then you're done. But it's pretty difficult, actually, keeping up for years, right? Keeping up, science work, and getting to engage with people. It can be very taxing. And so they've taught me quite a bit, and they've taken the time to connect me with educators, and taught me how to, how to write an Instagram post. What's the most successful way to do it. So they're a great entity. I hope to continue working with them for forever if they'll have me. We'll see.
Wow, that's
Hopefully they
very
will.
nice. That's very nice because it's because of things like this, you have your profile and it's very nice and the way you talk, the way you speak, the way you share this knowledge about plankton. I think it's wonderful and it's awesome. And then it's
Thank you.
it's nice. You're welcome. And Gabrielle, we are almost. I'll try to not ask a lot of questions because then we're gonna open a little bit and see if someone has something to ask. But
Sure.
what do you think? What's the biggest challenge in working with plankton? It's kind
Okay,
of difficult.
so it is a bit difficult question. Okay, the biggest challenge, I'm gonna give two parts. The first one is a challenge for me, and I think anybody else that doesn't have a disposable income. But in order to look at certain types of plankton, the tools that are required are very expensive, right? So you need a really good microscope to look at small plankton. You need a lot of processing tools to preserve and also to count, to run genetics and look at like the eDNA of a plankton community. And so it can get expensive to do this. It's not as simple as taking a pair of binoculars and looking at the water. There's a lot of so for people, for everyday people to get involved with plankton, it sometimes can be a bit challenging. The average student needs access to a microscope, and so I think that's a challenge. And I think that another component of it is that there aren't a lot of plankton scientists. Like there just aren't a lot of us. There are some, but plankton they're lesser known organisms, and so people are always studying the sharks and the whales and the sea lions and the fish and the coral and all of that. But and so it makes the work that we do that much more important, because it's not as sexy. It's just not as sexy as a great white shark. It's just not. So.
Oh God. Yes, yeah, I agree with you. I've never thought about that, about this point of view. That's something difficult to, and it's expensive, even if you don't have the best equipment. It's you have to, it's necessary some money and some energy, because it's not like walking around and seeing the organisms. You have to. Yeah, it's an effort bigger than studying other organisms, and it's very nice. And then it's the other thing, it's difficult to share this knowledge. Is because of this. I appreciate a lot people that like you that share this knowledge, and because it's necessary. We know that's very important. It's we have to do this work. Someone has.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you.
And then to finish and open to see if someone has some questions, who or what or who inspires you? Your work or in your life or whatever.
Let's see, who inspires me? I will say that my family and friends definitely are my support system. But as you mentioned earlier, I would say, Sylvia Earle was an incredible inspiration for me when I was a kid. I am inspired by also the students. The students that I meet that are interested in plankton, they inspire me because of just their natural curiosity. And I hope that I never lose that. I hope that I never lose that natural curiosity for science and the plankton world. So I think that it's kind of a mix of, a significant other, a family member, a friend, a few students. It's all in there. Who inspires you? Is there anyone that sticks out?
Yeah, I've never thought. I always ask people and this, because I think it's nice. And I don't know. I think students are very inspiring too. People that are interested on our work, because I teach plankton. Because here in Brazil, we have a lot of people that want to work, that needs to work because of the legislation, because we have licensing, environmental licensing of pollution activities that pollute and everything. And then we need to study plankton in all these places that are gonna be negatively impacted. And then it's growing the necessity that people to know this kind of work, this kind of. And then I teach plankton. I have courses. Then I teach people phytoplankton, how to sample, how to count, how to identify. Yay! That's the most difficult thing. I try to teach how to identify. This is
Yep.
the most difficult. And then when we have people interested and have the same passion as we have, then it's very, very inspiring. And the curiosity, I'm very curious. And then I think that Plankton is always feeding this curiosity because there's always something new. There's always. And
Yep.
then it's been years I work with Plankton, but I always find something new. I always find something difficult. And then I go curiosity and curious. And then I go, okay, let's see who is this. And
Yep.
then I think it's this. I'll think about
It's a very
better.
diverse group. It's a very diverse group of organisms. You always find something new. Always.
Yeah. And then it's because of this, it's a little bit difficult too. It's difficult to teach, it's difficult to work with, and I think it's necessary curiosity and passion, because if you don't have it, maybe you're gonna work with other thing, not Plankton.
Yep.
Don't you think?
Absolutely.
Okay, Gabrielle, I'm gonna open here the comments and see if there's some someone that wants to ask something in English, because we don't have a lot of people that are fluent. I am not fluent too, but I try. At least I'm a poker face to try to speak in English. And because it's been a long time, I didn't speak in English with anybody. I think I've been to New York in 2016. And it was the last time I practiced my English.
You'll have to come back. I'm in New York right now. Come back. You'll have some place to stay.
Yeah. I'll go after pandemic.
Yes, yes, after pandemic.
Yeah. And let's see if there is something here. If someone has something to ask to Gabrielle, it can be in Portuguese, and then I can try to translate to, then we see if we have some questions. Claudia Bonecker she's a teacher here in Brazil at the university, and she works with zooplankton, and it's very interesting, you see. Now we have a question. What are you currently doing to pick interest in plankton in the younger generation? Well, difficult question.
That is a very difficult question. Thank you, Nolan. Nolan is a pretty incredible scientist herself. I used to work with Nolan when she was an undergrad, and
nice.
She's pretty great. Let's see. What would I do? I would say I work with a lot of teachers to create curriculum and lesson plans that incorporate plankton. And so I think inspiring the younger generation of students in grade school is a really good first step of getting them introduced to plankton, right? Get them to understand the difference between phytoplankton and zooplankton. And so that's the beginning step. I work with somewhere between 13 and 15 teachers in elementary school. And I think that there's also something to be said for showing people pictures, right, on social media. I think that maybe helps reach some people, some of the younger audience, of just trying to get them engaged with photography.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. Pictures are very interesting to have this passion. It's impressive and things. My alarm for us don't. We have 10 minutes to go to 1 hour, but then let's see if we have some more questions. Cihelio is it's a PhD student here in Brazil, and he's asking, what are the opportunities for working with plankton in the USA? Are environmental licensing job easy to get? Because here we have a lot of people working with plankton for licensing, and this is the question.
Let's see. I will say that most states that have a large lake or that have a shoreline to the ocean will have some type of plankton monitoring program. It typically will not fund too many positions. You're looking at a handful, anywhere from 3 to probably 7 people within a program is probably the most average. And that number is based on, the numbers that I know in just on the East Coast of the United States. So it's not, I would not say that the job is prevalent, but I will say that they are anywhere there's a large body of water and someone has to test for harmful algal blooms, there will be that job. So if you're interested in coming to the United States and looking for them, go to a shoreline state, or go to the Great Lakes in the Midwest, and look for the algal sampling there. That is where you're going to find some positions that are open, and they range. You can have people, straight out of college, get them all the way up to a PhD. So they range in salary quite a bit, especially based on your own experience. So if you have experience, then that's great, because there's not a ton of experienced people out here. So the more experience you have, the better.
Nice, nice. Thank you, Gabrielle. Let's see what else. Hello. What do you think about science citizen?
I think so. Citizen science is a really important part of plankton sampling and monitoring, especially when you have someone local that sees an algal bloom and they're able to grab you a water sample from their lake or what have you, because plankton, as many people can know, can shift rapidly. You can have a plankton bloom that has come up within 2 days, and all of a sudden the water is green or red or dark brown from that really high algal biomass. And so having citizen science when sampling for plankton is huge, because it allows for very quick sampling. I think that we need more of it, and there should be more funding.
Yeah, nice, very nice. Yeah. Let's see what else. Amazing. People like the. What else? Let's see if I have more questions. If you have more questions, go now. Let's see if you
So while we're waiting for the questions, I want to know what everyone's favorite plankton is. What is, you can type in the chat, or Vanessa, why don't you tell me what is everyone's favorite plankton?
Oh, this is a good question. What are your favorite plankton, people? Tell us. I don't know even. I don't know if I have a favorite plankton, but I like a lot of the zooplankton and cladocerans. I like them. It's more fresh water. And yeah, marine plankton, the copepods.
Copepods, very nice.
Yeah.
Very.
All of them. Yeah, people. My favorite plankton is microcystis, all thing.
Nice. Yeah, cyanobacteria is pretty, you can find it in so many different types of water. So that's a good one. I think my favorite one is probably Odentella, the phytoplankton. So that one is really pretty. If anyone has an opportunity to Google them, they're very, very nice.
Yeah, I know Odentella. It's very beautiful. It has the projections and things.
Yep.
It's beautiful. Plankton, phytoplankton, marine phytoplankton, diatoms are very beautiful. I love diatoms. They have this ornaments in the. It's very interesting. All of microsterias, we call here microsterias, is and rotiferous diatoms, marine diatom. Yes, Odontella is a marine diatom. Because most of people, then the Brazilians that are in our life, work with fresh water. Then Facus is beautiful too. You see, this is nice. I love this this think of asking people what's the favorite plankton. I love this. Well, Gabrielle, I think I'd like to ask you as to close our session. I would like to record this and share, if you don't mind. And I'd like you to say, to leave a message for our audience, for our public. I'll leave a message wherever you want.
Let's see. About anything? All
About
things
anything?
plankton? About anything.
Yeah, what do you think?
I would like to thank you. Thank you so much for having me for this awesome, hour of talking about all things marine science and plankton. It's been a lot of fun. I think that if anyone is interested in learning more about plankton, reach out to a local university, to a local professor, and maybe get into some research if you have the opportunity. If anybody has any questions about what I do, I'm happy to answer, email, and I can provide that with you if you'd like, and you can share it. And I'm just so honored that you were able to have me for tonight. So thank you so much, and for everybody else, keep on, appreciating the tiny plankton that surround us, and every lake and ocean that you go to, and take that mouthful of water and swallow the thousands of plankton. So just appreciate the little plankton around you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Gabrielle. I'm very, very happy to have you here, to have you tonight, because I follow you. It's been a while, and I think it's amazing. I'm very fan of your work, and keep going to keep posting. And I'll be always here to be and to be with you in this plankton universe, to share knowledge about this plankton. I think it's very important, and I can see you are a plankton lover too, and then it's very nice to share and to connect with people that have the same love for plankton, and that have this education and thing. You see that you share your knowledge, you talk about plankton to all people, to students, to young people, and to researchers, to scientists, to governed people, and you talk about plankton everywhere you go, and you share this knowledge. And I think it's very important, because here in Brazil we have a lot of people that work with plankton too, but that still doesn't share this. And I think in the world there's a lot of people that work with plankton that don't share their knowledge. And I think it's very, very important, and it's awesome that you are doing this work. And congratulations, and I'm very happy that you had this time here with us. Okay,
Thank
then.
you.
Oh,
Yes, thank you. And maybe, in the next few years, I'll come down to Brazil and see your lab.
yeah, come. You'll be welcome here, of course. Gabrielle, could
Thank you.
we take a picture? We have 1 minute left, then we have to let's take a picture. I'll disable the comments. Okay, let's big smile. Okay, Gabrielle, then thank you so much. I'm gonna finish here, because then I can record our Instagram live, and then after I'll share on YouTube or things, and I'll let you know. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye everyone.